Assalamu alaikum. It's nice weekend, Sunday evening. A lot of you might have something special tomorrow, but we have a lesson to cover as promised, and what we are going to focus on is humanizing data in IELTS Task 1. That's how GPT paraphrased what I literally said. So what I wanted to explain is for Task 1, how a lot of students make this mistake, and I don't want you to make this mistake. And in the end, I will also provide you with the solution for these problems. So let's get to the theory. What happens is, so you might get a chart like this, for example, right? The chart below shows the number of jobs in tourism industry in the UK city between whatever. So we have a chart, and what's the common mistake that happens is basically when students start writing immediately. This is like for like band six, they can notice the changes, right? They know that this is line graph, disguised as bar chart. But the problem is when they start writing, when they want to create a fully covered overview with full coverage, they usually do like this. Restaurants increased, right, or decreased. Hotels remained, sports fluctuated, travel and tours declined, which in fact, well, the reality is they are not even wrong actually. This is completely fine for band six. Well, yeah, let's say restaurants increased, right? Increased or like peaked probably, right? Peaked by mid period, yeah. Some hotels declined, which is also fine. But there is a problem here. What is happening? Can I understand what's happening if I read your report without the data being included? Well, the short answer is probably no. What you should actually write is basically what's really happening. Just pay attention. Read the number of jobs. All right, now that makes a lot more sense. We have the numbers here on the left, vertical line, and on the on the x-axis we have the years, right? The y-axis and x-axis. So let's look at the blue, right? Just to focus on the blue one. What's happening with blue? The blue is rising, right? Rising consistently until 2004 and experiencing a sharp decline. And not much happening if you compare the beginning and the end. It basically remained the same over the period. But what is blue? The blue is restaurants. Okay. The number of jobs in restaurants. All right. The number of job, the most popular place or the most popular employer, right? Were the restaurants. That's what you need to write. They were employer. The number of people rose, not the restaurants themselves, right? How about hotels? Hotel employees, the number of hotel employees remained unchanged. That's what you need to write. Okay, let's look how you create this. So basically, this is the raw data, right? This is, I mean, we are lucky to have bar chart in the first place, but it's not story, right? So let's turn this into story. How do you do that? I'm gonna try, I try to explain this as quickly as possible, but it may take some time. So who or what is actually doing this? Yes. For example, label. This is what GPT, let's look at this one. GPT recommended to use these strategies. Internet, instead of internet, you should say internet users, right? Internet doesn't increase or decrease. So you use your logic after writing. What am I actually doing, right? TV. TV increase, TV doesn't increase nor decrease, right? Reading, readers. Resort stay, tourists staying at resorts. I sent the sample for this. Backpacking, backpackers, those who chose this option. Oil use, the usage of oil consumption, oil consumers, right? Basketballs. What do you do with basketball? You play. So think about the verb you can do for these nouns. Okay. Concert, you attend concert, right? Concert goers, nice phrase. Museum visits, museum visitors. Car theft, stealing cars, house burgling, burglars, online shopping, shopping online or purchasing online, buying things online, fast food, eating fast food, consuming fast food. Think about the verb for the category you have on your chart. That's the key. Let's look at some examples, right? For example, oh, sorry. Good old bug we have. So, internet increased dramatically. Internet doesn't increase grammatically. It's first of all, it's mechanical. Second of all, it makes sense to a degree. So you will probably get secure around 6, but the number of internet users increased dramatically. Now we know what's actually increasing. If this is the verb, well, what's happening? The number is increasing, not the internet itself, right? Or here. Um, so resort stay rose steadily. Resort stay doesn't really rise. The number of tourists staying at resort rose steadily. But there is a problem. You may have to overuse the word number in this case. So the solution is the grammar, commenting, which was our last lesson, or combining two sentences, using while structures, having general trends in your overview. These are the things that you use to avoid overuse of the number, the figures, or all that stuff. Oil use declined in the US. No, the oil consumption in the US declined. Not the oil use, but oil consumption. This is actually quite fine, by the way. Basketball increased. Basketball doesn't increase, right? More people participated in basketball. It was a stadium chart. Uh, so we have some structures. Using the number of solves a lot of problems. There are two things. So the first is number of, and the other one is the percentage of, the proportion of, the share of. You have to be careful with those, right? If you actually have numbers, say number of. People who, another beautiful strategy, people who access news. So what you basically do in your every sentence, you swap the subject to make it more varied. People who watch TV remained the majority, means beautiful, another beautiful. The other thing is using these, how can I say it? These like more like professions, jobs, or whatever. Oil consumers reduced their usage. So this is like a subject, beautiful subject. Internet users doubled. Concert goers increased significantly. Another thing, tourist travelers. Why this improves your task? Because students describes actual trends, not labels, right? Your lexical resource increases, and you know, you start writing much more eloquent, much easier to read, right? Much more reader friendly. Cinema increased. Come on. The number of cinema goers increased. The participants who chose cinema increased. The number of participants increased. Internet became popular. Accessing news online became increasingly popular among users. That's a different world, you know what I mean? Backpacking dropped. The number of backpackers fell slightly significantly. Now, how to avoid the number of, that's a very specific case. You should read my samples and you can see how I, subtly avoided this, but it's not easy, I can admit. Oil use remained stable. Oil consumption remained relatively stable. You should also use adverbs. This is whole another lesson, but adverbs are very important here to describe the change and how the change happened, right? So basically to describe the verb itself, right? So this is what I wanted to teach. Well, is that it? That's the end, yeah? Well, not really, because what I basically did, what I've done until this point is basically pointing out the problems that students usually make. But have I given the solution for this? Well, no. What I did is basically what most teachers do, right? I'm not criticizing them, but now I'm gonna give you the solution. And solutions for writings or for IELTS itself usually come from outside sources, not related to IELTS or have nothing to do with IELTS. So I'm gonna give you a very useful channel to learn to master your to how can I say to jack your vocabulary and grammar. And this is one of them. Everything econ. We have covered this in our classes, but you may not have attended the classes, the offline classes. And I highly recommend this website. You have to be careful, by the way, they are quite political, but the language they use is, incomparable to any other channel. I think they are so related to task one. You get overwhelmed uh, when you see how they describe data such in such an effective manner. Let's play one.
The world spent almost $3 trillion on its militaries last year, and over a third of that was from just one.
That was a bit more political. All right, let's population. That's quite
The
safe.
world has over 8 billion people. These are the richest countries in the world. The world has over 8 billion people, and over a third of them are in just two countries.
That's enough. Well, that's enough. That's already beyond 8 level. Over a third of them. Beautiful.
India overtook China as the world's
Overtook, you can use, overtook, outspace, surpass,
most populous country in 20.
most populous country. You see how, first of all, pay attention how the chart is, is a nightmare for for us basically. But the content creator, right? The author is describing in such a manner that you want to listen. All right, look at this.
2023 and will reach 1.5 billion by the end of the decade. China's population is actually declining.
China's population is declining. Not China declining, China's population declining.
And is projected to lose more than half of its
Projected to for future
people
predictions.
by the end of the century. Indonesia and Pakistan rank in fourth and fifth place.
Rank in fourths and fifths. You have comparatives, highlights. So basically everything is to perfection here. But you have to be careful. Not everything can be taken for IELTS writing. The other one is a bit more advanced, but I think that does the job is probably capital.com. It's a bit more economical. I have no idea what I'm actually promoting. I have no idea. I have no sponsorships with these channels. But for the sake of knowledge, all right? There are some political stuff. There's some political stuff going on here, but I hope you just, extract the knowledge part, extract the juice of these channels, right? These are not short videos, by the way. So you're gonna play and you see yourself how useful these really are. But they helped me a lot, quite honestly. So I hope you learned. So what have we covered in today, right? Again, don't look at the colors and increase, decrease. Look at what's actually happening, okay? It's certain things from your own experience, although this is not required in task one, but make sure it's not that emotional, okay? Try this for your, check this in your past samples that you have written before and see if you have done a good job in terms of this. So I hope this video was useful as usual.